Welcome back to episode 10 of the Double Down podcast presented by Waterwave. Today is Friday, November 25th. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to the birds chirping in the background, you can obviously tell we're not in Minnesota anymore. We're actually in Dana Point, California for the SoCal Challenge. The basketball team is down here. As you guys know, I play basketball for the University of Minnesota. So you know that we're down here. As you hear the birds squeak in the background, you know that we're down here in California. We had a game on Monday, and then we have another game today, Wednesday. You guys know that we pre-record episodes, so you know that we're a little behind, but we play again today. And yeah, we're excited to be down here. It's beautiful down here, and we're just enjoying this 65 to 70 degree weather that y'all don't have in Minnesota. So we're very lucky. You guys know that we start the podcast with the Double Down Weekly wrap up. When it comes to my knee, not a whole lot to wrap up on. Kind of the same stuff. We're just chugging along, and we're trying to get better every single day. And that comes with, lifting on the road. It's not a vacation, unfortunately. It's just as much work as, we got going on back home. So we're trying to stay up on, all the rehab, all the weightlifting, 5 days. You can kind of sit back and enjoy this pool, which we have, but also, we got to make sure we're getting stuff done. And I think we've been doing a good job of that with the athletic trainer and our strength coach as well. When it comes to Gopher basketball, we're 4-1, off to a pretty good start. We got a big win over Cal Baptist University on Monday. A nail-biting win. We started hot, got up 15-0 early, and then took the pedal off the metal a little bit, but we ended up bouncing back, and we ended up getting a win in overtime. Huge bucket by Dawson Garcia. Huge play by Pharrell Payne. So want to shout those two guys out. And then if you were watching, you saw that Jamison Battle was back. Super excited to have JMO back. He's got his legs underneath him, and he's back roaring, and we're excited to have him back. In other wrap-up news, the World Cup is back. If you guys are soccer fans, soccer watchers, U.S. They drew 1-1, and they play again versus England today, which is Friday. So we're excited for that game. And in last news, Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was yesterday. So hopefully everybody got to spend time with family, just be around loved ones, and give thanks for all that, all that is good in this world. So make sure you guys stick around here for our future presentation. Today, I welcome on a special guest who is with me and the team out here in California. The Madison, South Dakota native played running back and defensive back for Madison High School, which reached the state 11A title for 2 straight years. He was named All-Dakota 12 Conference and an honorable mention in All-Dakota 12 Conference. But nowadays, documenting sports is at the forefront of his life, and not so much playing. The multimedia content producer works for the University of Minnesota and the NFL, creating video content unlike any other. A new personal friend of mine, Isaac Schubert.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, super happy to have you on the podcast. We've kind of developed a friendship, through these, me being hurt and just being able to see on the sidelines and that kind of stuff. So I'm super happy to welcome you on. Let's start early age. Let's start growing up. Were sports kind of in your life from an early age, or was it something that you developed more later in your life?
Not really early on. It was so actually I'll just back it up. Like, I actually grew up overseas.
Okay.
For 6 years. My family spent 6 years overseas in Tanzania, Africa. So my dad's a pastor, and we were doing mission work over there for the early years of my life. And then that's when that time ended, that's when we moved to Madison. And the first sport that I really picked up was skateboarding, because I didn't really have too many friends early.
Gotcha.
So it was one thing that I could really do on my own. And then 2 of my buddies introduced me to football. So I was in 5th grade, and that's kind of where I fell in love with the sport. And really the reason why I picked it up was because it was just a way for me to hit people without getting in trouble.
There you go.
It was super fun. I just fell in love with the game early on, and then the dream was always to make it to the NFL, as any kid would be at that age. And then so yeah, that's kind of the introduction to sports early on.
Yeah, so then you kind of found that identity in football, and I bet your buddies were playing football and that kind of stuff. And I think high school football is such a special thing. I wish I would have continued to play it through my years. I stopped after my freshman year, but such a special, it's so short and it's so quick, and it's like you bond with these people so fast. And I don't know, I think it's such a fun thing. and you end up being pretty good at it, so you start this recruiting process. Kind of take us through the early recruiting process for you. When did you know you kind of wanted to play and in college? When did you know maybe you wanted to, leave Madison? How did that kind of go down for you?
I always knew I wanted to play college. I just didn't really know where. I am sort of a homebody, but then at the same time, I was like going through this weird, I want to get out, but I don't really know if I'm like ready to get out yet. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think I always wanted to play college football. I just didn't know where. The recruiting process was quite an eye-opening experience. I just never really had any experience. I didn't really have any friends that went through it, so I couldn't ask them like what it was like.
For
So
sure.
it was all really new. I went on a visit to Black Hills State, USF, Dakota Wesleyan. So like those are kind of the three schools that I really checked out, and it was just really interesting because it was such a new concept to me. But yeah, and then at the end of the day, just ended up at USF in Sioux Falls.
Yeah, so you end up committing to USF, which is for those of you that don't know, a pretty just solid Division II program. It's a program that competes for the NSIC title every year. As you guys, the viewers know, I was in the NSIC as well, so I watched several USF Northern State football games and just solid teams. So you come in and you're coming to a pretty good team. Where is your mindset at coming in, like redshirting? Am I going to play right away? How did you kind of approach that tough freshman year kind of situation, which a lot of us, I faced it. A lot of guys on our team currently are facing it. It's a tough adjustment. How did you kind of go about that?
It was just kind of figuring it out. That's just a common term for at least my class coming in, was just figuring it out. And I mean, so I actually ended up turning down a couple offers to walk on at USF. I don't know why, but USF was just the place, and I'm sure a lot of college athletes can understand when they walk on campus. It's like you can't really explain it. It's
Yeah.
just where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that that was the place I wanted to call home for the next 4 years. And freshman year was just tough. I knew being a walk-on, it wasn't going to be easy for me. I was pretty much at the bottom of the list for everything, and it was just tough, not knowing where you stand. And so I knew I needed to work, and that's just one thing that I always took pride in, was my work ethic, and in the gym, in the film room, at practice, whatever. And my freshman year was quite a letdown, and ended up tearing my Achilles in like November or something like that, just in practice. And that was kind of the point where I needed to figure out if football was for me or not. And it just sucked that it started right as I came into college.
Yeah, take it. You've told me the story about this Achilles injury, but it's kind of a unique, kind of almost silly kind of story. Take us through, take the viewers through this interesting story of you come into freshman football right away. You're getting throwing in the chute right away, and then this happens. Kind of take us through that story.
Yeah, I mean, well, the step up from small town Madison high school football to college football at USF at a very accredited Division II school,
Yeah.
like the one things that I just didn't understand was like the playbook was so complex, and just things that you needed to know, and the alignment, the assignments and stuff that like they really do say it's a game of inches, and really it's not like, an inch or two is going to be the difference in the game. But an inch or two could mean the difference between a broken tackle or a tackle, or things like that. And it's just, in high school you never really understood the margin for error. So taking that into perspective my freshman year was a lot to bring in. And then on top of just tearing my Achilles, which how does that happen to an 18-year-old kid? Like,
Literally, yeah.
so it was a fluke injury that sidelines and honestly ends careers. And it was just such a weird time because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I came to a school that I wasn't like necessarily like on the top of the recruiting list. I was injured and couldn't walk, and now I'm away from my home, my family, my friends, and I really didn't know what to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's such an interesting perspective because, I didn't get injured early. I got injured late in my career. And I can only imagine the mental and emotional just responses to being hurt early. You mentioned you're not on the top of the list, and, obviously coaches love their players all the same and that kind of stuff. But you're probably going to feel something a little different if your starting running back goes down versus the redshirt freshman. How did you how did you go through that mental process of like, hey, maybe I'm like not even on the bottom of the list. Maybe they're not even thinking about me now. Is that something you kind of thought about at all?
Well, I knew that they weren't thinking about me because like one of my coaches was just like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "I don't really know." And he was like, "Well, just let me know." And I was just like, "They
What?
they don't care." Like when you're at the bottom of the list, you get hurt. It's not like it doesn't affect the team. It's just like, all right,
It more affects like what the heck am I going to do next?
right. And that's the problem that I had to like deal with is like if I stay or leave, it doesn't really matter to the staff. It doesn't really matter to anybody except to me.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of late nights just thinking like, what am I gonna do now? Because I knew I didn't want to close the door, but here I am, not able to walk, not able to play the game that like I came to college for, and I was just extremely lost with it.
Yeah. Well, and you planned not your whole life, but you planned the next 4 years of your life out saying, hey, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to play football. I'm going to, be good. Obviously, you're the type of guy I've known you for long enough now where you're going to put the work in and you're going to, you're going to make the most of your opportunity. Kind of take us through those late nights, those, mental, judgments, those mental health kind of, problems. Where was your mind going? What were you thinking? Like, what's the next step for you in terms of football in this situation?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of nights praying, a lot of nights just asking God, like, give me a direction, something.
Yeah.
And so I remember like sitting late at night because I was about to go talk to our head coach, and I was like, God, whatever coach says, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I go to coach and I just said, hey, I just unloaded and just said, this is what's going on, like on the brink of tears. Like I didn't know what I was gonna do. Like I felt lost. And Coach Stuger is probably one of the best coaches I have ever had. He's at Lindenwood right now, and he just asked me like what I wanted to do, and I said, Coach, I want to play. Like I've gotten here, I've gotten this far, and I feel like I didn't get this far just to end it so early. And he said, well, like you showed us some stuff in fall camp, you showed us some stuff throughout the season. Like we think that you could be a contributor to this team. And he said, I think you should stay. And so I said, okay, coach, I'm all in. And pretty much the rest was history. I think.
No, that's awesome. I think it's such a unique thing that I kind of went through with Coach Johnson, where when I tore my knee in the transfer portal, I was like, I want to do this thing. I want to play basketball. I want to play basketball for you. Do you still want me? And that unwavering trust and from a coach to a player is something that like it helps your whole rehab process. I think you can probably attest to it. I'll ask you about it. But for me personally, it was like I wanted to work hard. At the end of the day, I'm doing this for myself. I'm not doing it for anybody else. But when there's people in your corner and there's people on your side that want to help you, it becomes an even bigger deal. Because you're not only letting yourself down, you're letting people around you that love you down. That's when it gets kind of tough. Did you kind of feel that kind of going through your recovery process?
I don't think it made the journey any less easy, but it made it more purposeful.
Yeah.
And that is really what it came down to was like, I wanted to have a purpose. I wanted to have a reason why I was going to film, why I was still going to lifting, why I was still going to rehab at this time. Like, if there's no point behind it, then what's the point of doing it?
Yeah.
And so just having coach believe in me and say, hey, like, I think you can play here. That was enough for me to just get going. I just needed somebody to say that to me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And you did it. You get through the kind of rehab process. Take us through, let's forward to like the back end of rehab, because we know it takes a while, we know the physical pain. We've talked about, the mental burden. We talk about the emotions. We talk about how tough it is physically on all aspects of your body, but you get through it. You're kind of towards the back half of it. What's on your mind? What are you thinking next? What's the next plan for you as a football player?
Well, I wish that it was the Cinderella story and I ended up like playing, having this fantastic career. But that's the one thing about sports is they're very real and they're very cruel at times. So spent 2-3 years rehabbing this Achilles, learning how to walk again, learning how to run, cut, play football, be an athlete, and ended up straining my hamstring really badly in spring ball before my senior season. Well, then I ended up just blowing my knee out in spring, and it was at that point, then it was over. And also Coach Stuger at this time had already moved on to Lindenwood. So I was 2 years in with a new coach, as well as, you know, uh, as well as with a broken knee now that I couldn't play, and I actually never played a single snap at USF.
Yeah. Wow. And I thought kind of the same situation with me, where you rehab from one injury and you're planning on getting back, and you're planning on this big future football career, and it gets cut short. Did you know right away that it was kind of it for you? Is that kind of how you thought?
Definitely, yeah. It was on a special teams drill, non-contact, just twisted up, and I was sitting there on the field, and I just knew. I knew. And John, our trainer, came over, and he was like, "Hey, are you okay?" I was like, "John, this is my ACL. Like, I'm done. I'm done." He's like, "Don't say that yet. Don't say that yet." And he's trying to keep me positive, but like I knew it was over at that point.
Yeah, I think it's I've talked about it with my knee. Is right away. I think people want to tell you to be positive, and people want to tell you that to keep your head up and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, like, we know our bodies better than anybody else knows their bodies, and right away. And you talk about that just feeling of being like, hey, that's it for me. I'm done. How tough was that for you? Because football is obviously something you found your identity in. How tough was that for you to just be like, yeah, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore?
It was extremely tough. I mean, like, when you think about like your entire identity, like, I've been playing football for 14 years of my life at this point. I don't really know what exactly my identity is anymore.
Yeah.
And at this point, like, it's hard for me to understand, like, what do I do from here on out then? Like, what's my next move?
Yeah.
I don't really know.
Yeah. I think it's tough, because you want to find your identity in something. You do it in football. I do it in basketball. How did you go about that, process with your mental health in terms of like what's next for me? What's going on? And we have a little friend in the background here. Let's give him a little shout out. Hey, brother. Could you turn it down just a tad? Could you turn it down just a tad? We're filming a podcast. Appreciate you, bro. Yeah. So that's the filming Cali life right there. We got all 8 teams here at this hotel. So I don't want to overstate my welcome, but at the same time, we got to get this podcast in the boys. No, backtracking to that kind of stuff. We talk about finding your identity, and I've talked about it on the podcast before. And when it comes to football and sports, it's great, but at the end of the day, we're bigger than just athletes. Where did your mind go when it came to like, hey, maybe football isn't it for me through these injuries, but I can do something in my life that's bigger than just a sport?
Well, I was actually an exercise science major, so I didn't go to school for film or anything at this point. But I knew that in the spring, I knew I committed to my team. I knew I was going to be there for the fall, so I didn't want to just take my last class in the summer and just dip out on them. So that's when I kind of found the camera and talked to our media department, and I just told them everything that happened in the past 4 years of my career at USF, and they were just like, go for it. Like, take all this stuff and learn and have fun and document your teammates. And yeah, it was crazy because like it was just like something to do in the fall during the season just to take up time. So I was still a part of the team. But then now it just turned into an entire career.
Yeah, and it's worked out awesome for you. You're traveling with us to Cali. You're working with the NFL. Is that kind of something you thought could happen right away, or how did this kind of like passion for the camera, for videography, for your current profession, how did that kind of start, and where did you think it was going to go initially compared to where it is now?
Well, I mean, you can ask all my teammates. I mean, like it started off by just making them look good. Like, I really wanted to just like give them a chance to have something that they never had, especially at the school. Is like nobody had pictures, nobody had videos, nobody had anything at USF, and so I was like, I want to give them something that like impacts the way that they play, it impacts the way that they feel they want to look. And like, we had a lot of really good players at USF and nothing to represent them by. And so to me, it was just like the last thing that I could offer this program. I gave my Achilles, my knee, my body, my 4 years of my life, like, and filming was the last thing that I could offer to the school. And I think after that, like, the passion of just telling stories from my teammates translating into other athletes, then that's where it really started to to blossom into a passion and ultimately a career.
Yeah, and it's worked out great, like I mentioned before, and it's something that I think when you look at somebody, you can tell what they're about. When I look at guys on our team, you're about playing basketball. When I look at our coaches, they're about helping young men turn into grown men, and whether it's basketball or whether it's life. And I think for you, you have a specific thing where you can highlight people's achievements. You can highlight good plays. You can highlight good sportsmanship. You can highlight whatever you want to highlight. That's the beauty of kind of your job. Is that something you kind of take us through? Like, why is that so interesting to you? Like, what makes you wake up in the morning and be like, yeah, I'm excited to do this?
I think it all just really boils down to approach. Every single athlete is a human being. And sometimes when you get a number and a name on the back of your jersey, audience and fans forget about that.
Yeah.
They don't understand that these are kids. These are humans. These are people that have life stories, struggles, things that they've had to do, to sacrifice to get to where they're at. And when you put a helmet on and you have a visor, you can't even see somebody's eyes. Like, how are you going to even understand that that's a human? So really what it just boils down to is like, I want to humanize the athlete again.
Yeah,
I want to make them be like, yeah, this is a person. This isn't just some robot out here running a play. Like,
which it sometimes feels like, and it's sometimes coming from that perspective, it feels like that to all of us. Especially when you add social media to the mix, and you add Twitter, and you add hate comments and that kind of stuff. It can affect athletes bigger than just the sport. It becomes a deterioration to your mental health. And I think it's something that, when it comes to your perspective and your job, you have such a unique role when it comes to like, hey, I can show that these guys are more than just on the basketball court. I can show their personalities off the court. I can show their personalities on the court. Is that kind of something that you find your identity in?
Absolutely. I think that it really drives a lot of what I do is, showing athletes in a good light and showing athletes that, they're humans. They're people with feelings and emotions. Like the criticism on social media is just ridiculous, because it's like, what would you do in that situation? How you sitting there with your keyboard, how would you approach that situation any better than the athlete? Like, they don't understand that. And I think being a former athlete, it allows me to have a different perspective than somebody who's never been an athlete and picked up a camera before. I'm not saying that like you have to be an athlete to be a good filmmaker, but I think it allows perspective, and that's essentially what filmmaking is perspective. You're basically just using a camera as a tool to show your side of the story.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously it's a very exciting thing. Everybody loves a sick hype video. Everybody loves good content of themselves, but I think your perspective of it is so unique when it's bigger than just the sport itself. I think that's how you have to think, especially as a videographer. We talk on our podcast about mental health, about different emotions. How are you kind of able to express your love for videography, like through the Gophers, through the NFL? Is there anything you do specifically that's like your unique thing, or is it kind of just like your perspective that you take into every video you make?
I'll just be honest with you. I'm still figuring that out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
It's hard to find, I guess, different things, just because like I'm still so excited to just be here. Because like I started with literally nothing, and now it's turned into filming a very accredited Division I program, and also one of the top teams in the NFL right now, the Minnesota Vikings.
Shout out the Vikes, Skull Nation, baby.
Skull Nation. So it's kind of hard for me to keep my emotions in check, because I'm so excited to be here that I'm still kind of coming down. I'm like, okay, like let's dial in. Let's find something else here. Let's find something unique, because I mean, like, it's still so cool to get attention for the things that I'm creating. Like I've had some pretty cool things blow up on like, Ball's Life or Bleacher Report, some things like, pop up, but like, I'm still trying to figure out what impact do I want to have here at the school, and then also just with the NFL. And I'm still trying to figure that out.
Well, I think you should never stop trying to figure it out. Actually, it's funny, we were in the Uber last night, and our Uber driver didn't speak great English, but she was telling us she graduated with an MBA, and she loves talking to people and learning about people. And the one thing she said that was really interesting, she mentioned, we never fully understand ourselves. And the moment we finally think we understand ourselves, we're changing. We're humans that change, and we're, ever changing humans. And I think that was such an interesting thing, because I was like, this lady could barely like say that to me, but I knew exactly what she was saying. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was such an interesting thing. And I think it, comes to you as a videographer. Obviously, you kind of want to find your niche, and you kind of want to find what you like to do. But at the same time, you always want to think, what's next, and what's, kind of the next step for me. Obviously, when you talk about video wise, your perspective on the video, but also in life, obviously, you found yourself in a pretty good spot. You're working with Minnesota and NFL, but what is your next step? What's kind of your next step physically? You want to stay around here a little while? Like, how do you kind of want to go about your career in terms of, creating amazing content?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit yesterday. Like, my goal right now is to win a sports Emmy.
Yeah.
I'd love to absolutely do that one day. And I mean, I'm working on some stuff right now, trying to figure it out, and I think that that's really where my purpose is, because when it comes down to it, I don't mind making highlights. I don't mind cutting up stuff for the Gophers or the NFL or whatever it is. But like, at the end of the day, highlights come and go. Stories will always stay. And the thing is like, I have such a unique opportunity to capture these stories at the highest level.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people get that opportunity, especially being in a program where it's like accepted to tell stories. And so that's what I really, love about the University of Minnesota and Coach Johnson, and just honestly this program, is because it allows me to be able to be creative, to tell stories, but then also really see where I can go with this. And that's kind of the goal right now, is like, I'd love to get a story put together that people can relate to, and it impacts and moves them emotionally to where they want to see this thing get an award. Like, that's really what it is.
100%. It's something bigger than the sport itself, and we mentioned it before on the pod, just highlighting athletes as, humans, more than just their, name and number and their jersey. And I think it's such a unique and special thing. As we wrap up here, we want to shout out Northern Chill. You guys can stop in the Waterwave store, come buy yourself some Northern Chill. Don't have any out here in Cali. Wish I did, but the best water in the world. So go check them out. The last question we ask all the guests on the pod. The question I ask them is, what advice do you have for others that have gone through this injury? And I want to ask you that too, but I also kind of want you to spin zone it on, maybe the sport ends and you find a new passion. What kind of advice do you have when it comes to that, injury, and, dealing with your mental health and, the different emotions, but realizing that you're more than an athlete and that you have a bigger kind of purpose in life? Kind of take us through kind of just maybe 1 or 2 points of advice that you have for somebody maybe that could be in your shoes one day.
Sure. As far as like the injury goes, I would say just be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you can relate to that too. You get put into a situation when you're injured that you are going to be very uncomfortable with learning how to do basic movements again. That was the hardest thing for me. I was like, how in the world am I going to learn how to take a shower? Just a shower. And like, when I tore my shoulder in high school, like, how am I going to learn how to drive with just 2 hands again? Like, basic, very, very basic things. And so from an injury perspective, just go at your own pace. Don't compare your speed to somebody else's, because like, your body is completely different than somebody else's. So don't be so caught up in the progress of somebody else that's maybe in a similar situation, or, even dealing with the exact same injury. The same thing goes for going into a profession that is different outside of the life of sports. Go at your own pace, learn at your own pace, because you can't fall into the comparing syndrome. We call it imposter syndrome in the videography world, where like, you compare your work to other people's work and then you just get sad because it looks better than yours.
Literally.
Don't fall into that, because that person may be doing it for 10 years and you've only just started, or maybe they come from a different perspective and that's just the way that they tell that story. And so I think what it really boils down to is learn and grow at your own pace, because no two people are the exact same. And
Yeah.
if you can learn to embrace the beauty in being different, then that's where you're going to be the most rewarded, not only as an athlete, but also as a creator or something in a respected field outside of
Or
sports.
it's just a human too.
Just
You
a
know what I'm
human,
saying?
just a human.
Which is
Be a
awesome.
human.
Exactly. You know, comparison. I like to say, I don't like to say this. I actually got to give a shout out to Shannon, our nutritionist. She told me one time, she said, comparison is the thief of joy.
100%.
And I thought that was super cool because it's like something that I even struggle with. You know, when you want to be the best basketball player, so you compare yourself to this, compare yourself to that. I'm never gonna be. I mean, maybe, but probably never gonna. I'm not never gonna be Kevin Durant. I'm probably never gonna be LeBron James. You know, but the comparison of doing that is the thief of your own joy. You got to be yourself, and you got to be your own unique person. I think that's such a cool thing to highlight, and such a cool guest to have on to show us that it's possible and that sports aren't everything. At the end of the day, it's a game, and this life and this thing you get to do as a human being is so much bigger than your individual sport. So just want to thank you for coming on the podcast. Remember to all our listeners to check us out on all socials, double_down_podcast. You can check out our link tree. You can go support us on there. We want to thank Isaac for coming on the podcast. We will be back in the studio next week, next Friday, coming to you guys live for a new podcast. We want to thank you guys for listening. I hope everybody has an amazing Thanksgiving. Stay blessed, and we're out. Peace.
Peace.